Cyprian Ivanov, does the hyperbolic optimism about the limits of human achievement create the need for scapegoats to explain when predictions don't turn out as hoped? Okay, so in a cult context, of course, because I believe that's how you're asking me this, I think what you're asking me is basically you have these groups that have this amazing optimism, this hyperbolic optimism you refer to, that we can do anything. The supreme test of a thetan, make it go right. No matter what context, under what conditions, we don't care, make it go right, right? That's a pretty optimistic point of view to have about whether somebody who has no training, no background, no experience whatsoever with something can actually figure it out, make it work, and produce products anyway, right? That's the Sea Org attitude. And there is something to be said about picking yourself up by your bootstraps and demanding more of yourself or of others than they could possibly deliver on. If done in a positive way, it can be incredibly empowering. But so again, I think what you're asking me here is, does that create the need for scapegoats if things don't work out? Yes. But I would say that what you are really talking about here is we need some kind of explanation. We need some reason. And generally speaking, when you have these hyperbolic optimism, as you say, right? When you have these ideas that are, sun, moon, and stars and rainbows and unicorns and stuff, and everything is all just so wonderful in this wonderful of all possible worlds, then if things don't work out that way, then you're going to be pretty upset, and you're going to be, you're going to need to know why, because you want to fix it. Because, that view, of course, is that things can be controlled and things should be able to work. So if they didn't work, well, we got to figure out why. And so there has to be somebody. In the destructive cults, it's a matter of somebody almost universally. It doesn't have to necessarily be somebody inside the group, but it's a benefit for the cult leader if it is, because they then can run guilt and shame as an additional factor of control on the members. So that's kind of where some of that comes from. Then there's also just the fact, as I was mentioning in an earlier question, that every single individual person you ever meet from here on out and have ever met in your past, they need the world to make sense to them. And half the struggle of your life is trying to make the world make sense. And scapegoats help with that, because then it eschews, then you're out of any responsibility. You're off the hook. It's their fault, right? So you don't have to take the blame. You don't have to take the hit. And isn't that convenient, right? Isn't that special? So it is a fairly natural proclivity on the part of human beings, I think, that we would look outside of ourselves for blame first. But of course, you have personality types that are more introspective and will blame inwards. And those types, of course, in a cult milieu, in a cult situation, will readily accept all of the blame and responsibility because they're already running that on themselves. So you get both types. And, you get the blame everybody else, and you get the, no, I'm always to blame. And, depending on which one you have in the mix, it'll depend on how it goes about happening. But will there be scapegoats? Oh, yes, there will definitely be scapegoats. Now, the other thing that happens, though, and worth commenting on because it's coming to mind here, is the Heaven's Gate, the way cognitive dissonance was discovered in the first place had to do with not Heaven's Gate, but another cult similar, is Doomsday Cult, and the day of damnation and doom and gloom came and went, and there was no doom and gloom. The world continued. Why? Well, rather than scapegoat people, another alternative logical fallacy you can offer instead is our group was so, even though it didn't come, the reason the disaster didn't happen is because our group was so vigorous, so active, so effective at what we were doing to stop it from happening that we actually prevented it. Or more historically speaking, what's tended to happen more is not that we put a stop to it forever, we delayed it. We put it off. And then the group is actually taking credit for the success, quote unquote, of having stopped that disaster from occurring when the prediction didn't turn out as hoped, you see. So you have that reaction can happen as well. And perhaps there are other, things that have happened too that I'm not thinking about right now. But those I thought were worth commenting on. So thanks for the question.